Thank you for joining us tonight. We've got another week of, if it's to be expected, it's going to happen in Delphi, and a lot of information has come out. We've had a letter we have that was written by Richard Allen to the judge. And so we're going to be looking at that. We'll be looking at some of the information of what it takes to fill out a probable cause warrant, arrest warrant, and what information might be would be contained within that arrest warrant. But as always, before we get into the presentation, respect the mods, respect each other, debate the issues, no problem there. If you have any other comments or questions we don't get to tonight, please let us just send them either to my email at steve@truecrimeweb.com or put it in the comments section of this video. But with that being said, we'll get started here. As always, a little brief bio. This is Mrs. Steve, and I'm Steve. I'm retired law enforcement. I had 20 years of service, worked all areas, started off in the jail, worked road, went on into investigations, had training all across the board, anything to do with law enforcement, had a lot of hours, became a crime scene tech, which helped my investigative career, state certified. And I've worked over all different types of cases, from minor thefts, burglaries, up to homicides. I retired and still in good standing, but after I retired, I became aware of the true crime world and web sleuths, and decided to try to become an ambassador for law enforcement. And this is the path and journey we're on, and it has opened up and into areas that we never dreamed of when we first started this channel. And I want to thank all my supporters. And Tom, hello everyone. Hope everyone is having an awesome Thursday. I am, and I appreciate that, Tom. Actually, I've got to tell everybody that Saturday, I've got to. We'll probably have a coffee included on Saturday, for the fact that I'm packing up and I'll be leaving out Sunday. We have a unexpected trip I've got to take again for one of the cold case families. We had contact today. And so I'll be leaving Sunday and be back sometime midweek. And so Mrs. Steve will be in charge of everything next week here. And we'll just have to see what that schedule works out to. But I want to appreciate all my supporters that allow me to do that we have committed to go out and work these cold cases for these families, and everything focuses around their schedule. It's not about me. It's about what I can do for those cases and everything. And so I'll be gone for a few days next week, but we'll be back on schedule. Just bear with us. And I appreciate all the support out there. And as we work some of this stuff, some of the cold cases I can't really go into details on, for the fact that we work on. And if the family doesn't wish to, or at what times do they wish information to be spoke about, if ever, then we speak about it. But if not, we just work the case the best we can, and just as hard as we do of those, just like Mr. Crum, Larry did a few weeks ago with us. But anyway, tonight we're going to be looking at where we're at. We have an individual that has been had an arrest warrant issued by probable cause, and he's facing a trial. And he has been placed in jail. He's being housed. Richard Allen originally stated that he was going to find his own defense. And since that time, evidently speaking with an attorney or two, found out that he doesn't have the resources to hire such an attorney, and has now requested that an attorney will be appointed to represent him. And we'll be going into that in great detail, because when I went and looked at what the commission, Indiana Public Defender Commission, that once, if you're ruled indigent and can't afford one on your own, which where does Richard Allen lie within that? How much money does he have? He'll have to qualify, but once he qualifies or becomes any time during this process at the level that would qualify, then the state has to do certain things. Our court systems has to do certain things. and it's going to be extremely expensive, especially if they seek death penalty. If it's a capital case and they go down that route, and we'll be getting into some of those details. But anyway, this here is Richard Allen. This is some pictures of him when he walked. He enjoyed hiking, walking trails, and so, like I said, he's currently the accused, and charges have been alleged against him as committing 2 counts of murder against Libby and Abby, and so with that probable cause, we have to look at those issues, and this will be the judge that will be hearing all the issues that's coming up. They're going, now that he has written a letter to the judge, and this being the judge that has been appointed to the case, you'll hear this. And a lot of decisions will be made by Judge Gull in the coming days, because as these hearings progress, for him to get a fair trial, certain things have to be met. And if they're not met, Constitution, you can't violate it. And so all the stuff of Indiana law, U.S. Constitution law, everything has to be met, and it will be met. Courts guarantee that, and the appeal systems guarantee that if you're accused of a crime, and when you go before your peers, you'll be presumed innocent until your jury of peers either finds you innocent or guilty. And so those are guarantees, and the state of Indiana will have to meet those guarantees. But anyway, this is a handwritten letter. You can't really, you can read it. It's available across, just type it in, and, Richard Allen letter for representation. It'll pop up. There's dozens of ways of finding it. We also got it, and Mrs. Steve typed it out for me so that we can read it a little bit better. And but one of the things that we have to understand, that when this letter was written, what type of person would write a letter needing this? Of course, during his first hearing, or before the judge for one of the appearances, he said that he was going to seek his own counsel. Then finding out that he wouldn't be able to afford such counsel, he's decided that he's going to throw himself at the mercy of the court. Well, even throwing yourself at the mercy of the court, there's still guidelines that have to be maintained, that the courts have to do before a judge can appoint you just a public defender. You have to qualify for that. You have to be indigent, or you have to be whereas you can't afford. And I don't know if there's anyone out there that can afford, of a working class individual, that can afford attorneys that have to meet certain qualifications to be able to represent someone in Indiana, because I looked up what it took for an attorney, the qualifications to represent a capital case, and we'll be going over those, and those attorneys won't be cheap. And so at some point, he will become qualified for indigent. I have no doubt. This case is going to be probably one of the most expensive cases. It's probably been one of the most expensive investigations that Indiana has seen. And it's going to be an extremely expensive case to prosecute, and an extremely expensive case to defend. And so all these are going to be, it's just going to be huge. And a lot of things are going to be brought up. And so we just have to look at all the things. But when I was looking at the letter and saw how it was composed, when you're in jail and you're have been arrested and you're sitting in there, if you have defense, or even if you don't have defense, you still have access to a law library. All defendants or all inmates have access to a law library, whereas you can go in there and study the law, look at things, and try to figure out how best you could either represent yourself, or what to assist your counsel in your defense, and to study law And a lot of inmates do that. And a lot of inmates are jailhouse lawyers and they help other inmates. Is that what happened with this case and this letter being written? Because when I looked at the letter, there's certain wording in it. We don't know, or I don't know, somebody may know, but I don't know, is this just a natural way of conversation for Richard Allen? Or did he go to the law library and compose this letter? Or did he get assistance from another inmate in composing this letter? Don't know. But when I was looking at letters to the judge for appointment of representation, I did see where it says when the letter is signed, it should be respectfully or sincerely. And then when you look at the case and you look at this, you can see that he did sign it sincerely, Richard M. Allen. Now this is the type version, and Mrs. Steve couldn't, and it was an extremely hard word, and I don't know if it's correct or not, but the first word up there she put that's undecipherable was, I think, associated. There's a stamp on top of it, and I believe that's the word.
I think that was it.
But we didn't want to. Yeah, we didn't want to assume too much on some of the stuff, but I think that word is associated. But the rest of it is here so that you have an ease of reading it. And in the cause listed above, I, Richard M. Allen, hereby throw myself at the mercy of the court. I am begging to be provided and with legal assistance and a public defender or whatever help is available. And we typed this out exactly as he wrote it. We didn't correct it, although Mrs. Steve did correct it so I could read and see how many errors were made in it in grammar. And there were a few, but overall I was surprised because I went in and ran it through a program to see the readability of this, the understanding of what level people read on, and this letter actually scored extremely high because it's very understandable. It's written clear, concise, as you'll see when I pull up that. But he went on and said, at my initial hearing on October 28, 2022, I asked to find representation for myself. However, at the time, I had no clue how expensive it would be just to talk to someone. I also did not realize what my wife and I's immediate financial situation was going to be. We have both been forced to immediately abandon employment, myself due to incarceration, and my wife for her personal safety. She has had to abandon our house for her own safety. What little reserve there is will fail to even maintain the original residence. Again, I throw myself at the mercy of the court. Please provide me whatever assistance you may. Thank you for your time in this most urgent matter. Sincerely, Richard M. Allen. I can tell you this from all the inmates, and I've dealt with thousands of inmates. This is a scholar of an inmate. Even with him writing it, and if you look at the letter and the note, it's extremely neat, well organized, and pretty well written, extremely well written for someone that is under the pressure, because you have to imagine the pressure that he's in and under, for the fact that you think about it, put yourself in those shoes, that if you were caught after murdering 2 children, the pressures of what you face are great. But then you look at it and say that, oh, you've been caught and blamed with the murder and you're innocent. Think of the pressures you would be under, regardless of innocent or guilt. Right now, we don't know. We don't know what the probable cause is. He hasn't been before a jury of peers, but we know that probable cause exists, and he faces possibly capital sentencing and a death penalty case. So regardless, he faces the same pressures, either innocent or guilty. And he's able to maintain and write in such a manner, which is quite telling to me. He can handle pressure. I would hate to imagine facing what he faces and being able to even try to write a letter and sign it. And there's certain things that when you look at this letter that, Tom 5, I'm surprised that there aren't lawyers standing in line with long-term notoriety in mind. And we're going to be addressing that in just a minute, Tom, of what lawyers could stand in line, especially if he becomes indigent. The state and and even regardless, even if he hired, it has to be an attorney that meets certain qualifications. We'll get to it. But some of the things in law enforcement that when we look at letters, either from people that write letters to, for any reason, is it a confession, or is it a letter from an armed robbery or a kidnapping, or a letter of someone that's going to cause harm to themselves? That there's certain parts of the letter, whereas as you can look at this, that it starts off, the letters are slightly larger at the beginning and slightly larger at the ending. And there's significance by the sizing of those letters. If you just looked at this letter overall, but when you are made aware that those last two lines are extremely, as far as the average size of his letters and the spacing, it tells you that that is the focus of what he wants to do. He's telling the court that this is urgent. And so, but it still maintains, it's extremely neat, well written. And I was quite surprised and shocked when I saw this letter, and especially knowing the pressures that he's under. But then for just for whatever reason, I ran it through the grammar and spelling check of the editor on our, is it Word, or which one would I use today? Word. I use Word, and the editor gave it a score of 77%, which means it's extremely readable, and the spelling was okay. Grammar gave it a 6. Clarity, absolutely. Conciseness, gave it well. Punctuations, checked it off. Vocabulary, checked it off. And so it scored a pretty good score as far as readability and understanding. And I looked up some of the averages, and I think the average American reads somewhere around the 7th, 8th grade level. And so it scored well above that, and or within those parameters, which means a lot. And like I said, anyone can read this letter and see exactly what he meant and what he was wanting. Now we get to the search warrant, or well, it doesn't really matter if it's search warrant, but this is a warrant for arrest. Some of the things that would be contained in the arrest warrant and how it shall be, I looked it up for Indiana. It said it will be in writing, and that you have to specify the name of the person to be arrested. And this is what we'll see, that on the hearing on the 22nd of November, should they release that and open up those sealed documents, you're going to be seeing this information that has to be within there, or within that affidavit. It's going to have his name. And even if he had a nickname or an alias, it would be in there, for the fact that sometimes we do have to go out and serve warrants on street gang. And some of those individuals sometimes have a name that we don't know what the real name is, other than what their street names are. But that, regardless, if you have that individual come, the letter will be submitted as evidence as to how he says and punctuates things compared to the catfishing correlation. Absolutely. Everything this man, but now there'll be a hearing on this. Now, I don't know if the letter will make it, because they'll have hearings about that. Some information, it will be admitted to the courts, but will it ever be seen by the jury of his peers? Don't know. That'd be up to the judgment of the court, and I would doubt that some of that will make it into it. But with the prosecution attempt, possibly. But yes, this letter will be analyzed by a lot of experts. And I'm looking forward to seeing some of the experts pull this letter apart. What training we had in law enforcement was what they trained us to do and what to look for in certain criteria. But it's not at the level that some of the professional people out there that do this for a living, about analyzing the behavioral science of writing and things. that they'll be able to tell us so much more. So I don't know if they'll will make it. Some of his letters that are intercepted, or some of the stuff that he has written that law enforcement may have that is pertinent and relevant to the case, they can make it into trial, and law enforcement and the DA would try to get those in there. I have no doubt. If he wrote something, or if there's something that is incriminating, absolutely they'll try to get that in there. But they'll set forth the nature of the offense for which the warrant is issued. This case, we got the murder. They'll state the date and county of issuance, be signed by the clerk or judge, and it will command that the person against whom the indictment or information was filed be arrested and brought before the court issuing the warrant. And they'll specify the amount of bail, if any, and it'll be directed to the county or judge. An arrest warrant may be in substantially the following form. 2, you're hereby commanded to arrest forthwith and hold that person to bail in the sum of, and to answer in the court of, and county, state of Indiana, and information or indictment for, and for warrant of bail is just a lot of legalese that means nothing other than go arrest him. Now we'll get into some of the probable cause stuff. Some of the information from where I read, I didn't pull every statute on it, but it can be either oral testimony or written testimony. If we go by what the Ron Logan affidavit for the search warrant was, they did a lot of written written information contained within the affidavit. Did they do that with this probable cause for this arrest warrant? I'm expecting yes, for the fact they sealed it. They wouldn't have sealed that probable cause warrant if there wasn't a large amount of details of information within that affidavit for the arrest warrant. So I'm expecting that on the 22nd, when they release it, we're going to have a lot of information that come, just so they can differentiate whether it's KK or him. My guess and speculation.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's a good one.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate the support. But there's just so much about those affidavits. And if it's sealed for a reason. It's sealed to protect the investigation or individuals. That's the only thing I can imagine that it could be sealed for, because they're carrying it further and there's information within that affidavit. Could they have done a limited amount of the writing and including it in the probable cause and just gave oral testimony? And for some reason, they chose not to do that. And is that just what they do there in Indiana? I don't know. But a lot of times you can give a substantial amount of oral testimony, and sometimes it has to be taken down by court reporters in certain cases, and actually the service of arrest. But once that affidavit is met and it's signed by the judge, it's given over to law enforcement. And Indiana, pretty matter of fact, that any law enforcement officer on any day of the week, at any time, day or night, that once they state their purpose, they can come in and get you. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. They're going to get you. And then they will be delivered to court or to jail. And whereas if they have a bond, they'll be able to make that bond. If they don't have a bond, they won't be able to make that bond. And if you damage property, which kicking doors down, breaking windows, yeah, been there. But it depends if it's wrongfully done. If you're harboring a criminal and you refuse to open that door, they're not going to buy you a new door. So don't harbor criminals. You ain't got to worry about the door being kicked down. But some of the things that this judge here will be facing is that when I looked up the Indiana Public Defenders Commission, that if from the letter that Richard Allen filed, throwing himself at the mercy of the court, that if they find him indigent, the lead counsel has to meet these qualifiers or qualifications, be within, and make sure that if it's a death penalty case, and if they go after death penalty, which is the worst case for Richard Allen, that or any individual, guilty or innocent, will ever face in their life. And there's certain things that are contained within the law that an attorney would have to be able to be qualified to even hear or represent a client. And when I looked it up, it said that the lead counsel, the court will appoint 2 attorneys. You'll have a lead counsel and a co-counsel. The lead counsel must have 5 years of criminal litigation experience. So he has to be a criminal attorney for at least 5 years, has had no fewer than 5 felony jury trials, and had taken those trials to completion, meaning to the jury. He has to have had at some time had at least one case as lead or co-lead when the death penalty was sought. So that if he's going to be lead counsel on this, either he had already done it on another death penalty case, or he was co-counsel on another death penalty case. And also, finally, that lead counsel has to complete within, or has completed within the last 2 years, 12 hours of training for defense of capital cases. And so that's the qualifiers that the lead counsel. Now, as far as the co-counsel, which the Indiana Public Defender Commission says 2 attorneys have to be appointed to represent, that co-counsel only has to have 3 years of criminal litigation, has to have 3 felony jury trials to completion, and has completed within the last 2 years 12 hours of training in defense of capital cases. Tom, too. They will redact a lot of the probable cause. I hope not. Tom, I hope not. But that is possible, especially if they're going to let out enough. And but that is extremely possible. You are correct. That more than likely is what's going to happen. But hopefully it's released and on the 22nd. No guarantee that it will be. They may have, and the judge may agree that they're going to hold it for longer. I hope not. But we'll see where it goes, because the court right now has they have a list of, when you go into Indiana, if you type in the Indiana Public Defenders Commission for indigent and for persons seeking public defenders, you'll see where it will refer you to the, I think it's case law 24 or the section 24 that will go into exactly what the counsel and co-counsel has to have. But the judge also has to consider that when they appoint this lead counsel and this co-counsel, and there's not a lot of attorneys out there. Now, there will be some attorneys that travel and do this stuff. We have them here in Georgia. That's all they do. They travel from one capital case to another when death penalty is being sought. And but the judge has to ensure that the lead counsel and co-counsel, that the workload that they are working will be at the point that if they have other cases, it will not overshadow this defense. And so that the counsel will be able to focus all their attention, as much attention as it can, to ensure that this case and this client and the defense will have sufficient attention brought to it for Richard Allen's defense. And so it's a very complicated, complex case that Indiana probably has never experienced. And whichever county, which I believe it would be Carroll County, I think they have to share the burden of the cost. So it's going to be extremely expensive if they seek death penalty. And if they do, it's like I said, it's going to be something that would be extremely educational on so many levels to bring people's attention to how our justice system works, and that which is guaranteed regardless of what you're charged with. In this case, we have the murder of 2 innocent children, and we have a guy that's being accused right now with probable cause that's sealed, that we have no idea of where it's going or what's happening. But anyway, with that being said, we'll get into the questions if we have any.
Okay. Let's start this there. 8:31. Daisy. Some of these are weird.
Okay.
Just a warning.
No, ain't no big deal.
I don't know. All right. And Kelt. Hello. May I leave my question now? Did RA really use an alias, or was that a clerical error?
I don't
Thank
know.
you.
I had heard about an alias, and I had mentioned it before that anytime we in law enforcement deal with someone, that if we run a driver's history, criminal history, and we see alias, that means something. And when was that clerical error? Could it have been on a prior whatever, or was it just recent? I don't know, but that is interesting. Hopefully someone in the chat will know that.
All right, so let's sneak a peek here. You've got some new subscribers
All
out
right.
here, and
Thank you, all my subscribers, everyone that helps us in so
CD
many ways.
is here.
CD is here. Hey, CD.
CD is here.
Check out CD. Yeah, he is another law enforcement officer out of New York. And I go on his show sometimes just in chat and aggravate him. Extremely intelligent guy, and analysis of a crime with CD, and check out his channel.
All right, and Deb is here, and she says the alias was a clerical error. Thank
Okay.
you so much for that, and hope you're doing good.
Thank you, Deb.
And here we go. All right. And Junior Johnson, I'm hoping he stays alive and we get to see and hear what he has to say.
I agree. We all need to, for the fact that if there's others involved, if he's involved, and there's only one way to find out, we have to put him in the before the courts and see and where it goes and what happens.
And CJK, have you listened to the new podcast from TMS? If so, your thoughts?
No, I hadn't seen anything on Murder Sheets today. I've been so busy. Like I said, we got a phone call today, and I was actually trying to set up with some other people some Zoom meetings, and then I received a phone call about going to work one of the cold cases, and so kind of changed plans all at once. But like I said, I should be back midweek if everything goes to plan, if weather works well and traffic is good.
All right. And Molly, likely all he would have to do to qualify is to sign over ownership of the home to his wife and any other assets that may have his name on it.
That, I don't know. The courts will have to look at that because,
She added to be considered indigent.
yes. And I'm sure there's certain processes, and it may be that simple. I don't know how they do it up in Indiana, but sometimes, if you try to beat the system, they have certain things set up that won't let you easily beat the system.
Okay, got to go something else. Jane from the country,
Jane,
super sticker.
$3. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
I've already spent that money. I'm going to be spending it Sunday. Like I said, I got to go for about another, let's see, it'll be about 2,600 mile round trip.
All right. And Molly, a letter being written seems a little behind the times. Would that have been immediately delivered to the judge? Seems like something you don't want USPS to lose.
When you're an inmate in jail, there's certain processes and certain inmates. And like I said, you have access to a law library, and the jail personnel is trained how to handle individuals, and there's instructions and there's protocols, there's how procedures are handled and what people are facing. And so, and there has to be that way, because you can't have where an individual is locked up and his rights not protected, because he is, through the eyes of the law right now, considered innocent until proven guilty. Even though law enforcement officers, when we see that probable cause, we go out there and serve it, because we don't have the ability to judge it. We take it at its face value that more than likely, probably, you did this and we're going to come get you. And that's what probable cause is. But even with those, you still have guaranteed rights.
And Daisy, he'll probably need a bunch of attorneys.
I know he's going to get 2 if he's indigent. And the courts, and they may apply that regardless, because in Georgia they do that, are the ones I've been involved in. That there's always been several attorneys, and so it may just be a common way that they handle it across all the states.
And True Crime with Shannon, everyone has a right to an attorney.
And if you get charged with a capital offense, you get 2.
Special.
You're special.
And sees through, if the tip line is still open and Ellie hinting there is more to this tragedy, can this case even begin in a courtroom?
Those tip lines will probably be open, because evidence can be brought in anytime and more evidence can be found. And Carter has alluded to the fact that it's an ongoing case. And so, and they still are seeking more information and always will.
The Rockaways. From the letter, it sounds like Richard Allen's wife is still on his team. Obviously, they have communicated about finances and defense.
It appears that way, because he has a clear understanding that his wife had to, and family has had to move for their safety, which I hate that. Families shouldn't be involved in this, either side. Same with what happened during the investigations with Libby's and Abby's family. They shouldn't be involved in this.
And True Crime with Shannon, do you think he acted alone?
No. There was something that, and I could be dead wrong, but the stats, the mathematics are against him acting alone and being able to control them, or setting up, there's so much information out there that we have to look at. How did he find them? What information did he have? Was there more than one? Which the probable cause affidavit is going to tell us a lot. But the way it's heading right now, even by having it sealed, it appears that there's something else coming down the pipe. What that is, I don't know. If it's other co-offenders, then they deserve to be in the same place he is.
All righty. And Jennifer Rochelle, he isn't very bright, but I never thought BG was. After seeing his letter and mistakes, I know I'm right. LOL.
Well, like I said, I don't know if he took that from another jailhouse inmate or what assistance he had, or if he just copied it, or he borrowed it. I went out there and tried to see if I could find a similar letter with the same in it, and I couldn't. But doesn't mean that there wasn't one that he just didn't change around the wording.
And Kate, someone must have helped him out with that letter. I wouldn't know the correct terminology, etc., to use.
I know in the letter forms that when I went out there and researched and looking at, if you're asking for either an attorney to come in pro bono for you, or if you're asking for the judge to do, it's in the exact format that they wanted it, pretty much. I mean, it like I said, it's very concise. It tells you who you are, an individual, and what your circumstances are. what your financial needs are, and what you're understanding, and exactly what you need and what you're expecting from the court. And he checked off all the boxes. There's not a judge out there that could read that letter wouldn't know what he wants.
Sees through. O.J. Stimson still owed his defense team dollars.
He owes a lot of people dollars.
Jennifer Rochelle, how dare he beg after killing 2 young girls? He's disgusting and pathetic.
I would agree. We have probable cause right now, and I would agree with your sentiment. If that's your opinion of it, absolutely.
And the Rockaways, Richard Allen gets 5 stars for courteous customer service once again.
I'm telling you, he's a messed up individual.
And Jennifer Rochelle, amazing he was a pharmacy tech with that intelligence level.
Yeah, but like I said, we don't know. He may be far more, I don't know what his IQ is. His handwriting is pretty good. I was impressed with his handwriting, and his signature. I was impressed with it. My mother always hated my signature and my writing. She does too. She can't read it. The judge would still be in confusion looking at my letter.
DGR Dave, this guy only cares about one person.
Yes. Innocent or guilty. Exactly correct. And but like I said, we got probable cause.
And I'm working on this name here. Ms. Innocent?
No.
Ms. Innocent Diggs?
Ms.
We'll go with Diggs. It seems he didn't think he would ever be caught.
Absolutely. And most of them don't. I've went in on so many criminals and see their faces when they're so surprised. Like, why are you here? You know why I'm there.
And Raggedy Susan, can you say narcissist?
Yes.
And DGR Dave, no lawyer is going to touch this until they know the charges.
Absolutely. But if they're appointed and they can't find representation, the court at some point, and I've seen it happen, whereas regardless that some attorneys didn't want to get, but you don't have an option. If you're on a certain list, and that won't be the case here. If it's death penalty, there's going to be attorneys that will represent him. They swore to their oath, and they're going to do it. They're going to give him the best defense that they can. And that's what that's what the Constitution guarantees. And we have to abide by that, regardless of what your personal opinions are. This is what has to happen.
And Molly, not sure about Indiana, but some states pay the appointed lawyer who's working pro bono quite a bit of money. They aren't going to go broke.
Oh, no. I've known a couple of poor attorneys, but very, very rare.
And Rockaways, will you be covering the new episode of the Murder Sheets? New inside info on catching Richard Allen, for what it's worth.
I'll look at it. If there's something in there that means something to me, yes, I will. I'll look at it. And I'll mention it regardless. It may be a few days for the fact, like I said, we had this unexpected situation occur.
And Single Mama 4, not a typical letter coming from an inmate.
No. I was impressed with it. That's just my 2 cents. But I've dealt with some inmates. And if you went in and you went into the jail system, most of the guys in jail, they quit school. And typically it's at the same age that once they get a certain age that they can leave school, somewhere around 15 or 16 years of age. So they only have somewhere between a 7th, 8th, or 9th grade education. And they didn't apply themselves. And that's how come I'm saying that with Richard Allen, his handwriting is extremely neat. and he was able to put out something that impressed me.
All right. And as I was scrolling, I saw where Shannon Foster, I believe, was in a car accident. I hope you're better.
Oh my goodness.
Keep that neck brace on until they tell you to take it off.
Goodness.
And Legay Ames, with a public defender, he needs to make a plea deal and tell all that he knows. Boy, that'd be nice.
It would. And that's possible that may happen, who knows? And when that happens, there's all different types of things that could happen that the families and the district attorney or prosecuting attorney and families and the defendant, whatever their negotiated deal would be, that and what would be revealed, what would he have to do, like with BTK, had to stand up there publicly and talk about certain details of the crimes committed. And that would more than likely be the case with this, if that does go that route.
And Deb, when people write their words close together, it indicates extreme insecurity.
Yeah, there's a lot of, like I said, those experts that do it for a living, they understand it far better than I do.
In True Crime with Shannon, if it gets unsealed soon, I bet it will be highly redacted.
Very possible. Very possible.
And Psych 101 at Steve, question, did you say the average American reads at the 7th and 8th grade level?
If I'm not mistaken, when I was reading that today, that's what it said, that the average American citizen reads at 7th, 8th grade level. And a lot of books and a lot of things are written for that level, as far as it being the easiest for the average American to understand. Didn't know that until today. I saw it, I read it. Doesn't mean that just because it's on the internet don't mean it's true.
Yeah.
I could have read the one, of course, that's wrong.
Okay. DGR Dave, this guy, like other serial killer types, are callous and vindictive. He is going to draw this trial out for a very, very long time, unfortunately.
If he is who we think he is due to this arrest, then you are exactly right. He is a potential to be animal that we rarely see.
And the Rockaways, Murder Sheets claims, confirms question mark, that Allen brought himself to police attention early on, saying he was on the trails at the time of the killings and played it off to his wife.
Yes, and as I've spoken before, I've talked to some professionals out there that will explain or have the ability to explain that certain type of relationship allows certain dominant figures in a household to explain away certain things that occur, and they take it for granted. Oh, okay, I believe you, for the fact that they are such a controlling individual. And you see it a lot in a lot of domestic issues, and when you go to families and things, that you may have that dominating, more often than not, male, that absolutely anything the wife tells them, they'll believe. Or anything that they tell to the wife, she'll believe.
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, yeah. No, we discuss everything. We don't. She just looks at me and says, really? 2 blocks away from Ohio. Hop aboard, everybody. Thank you. Appreciate that.
That's a good one. That's a good one. All right. And Pigeon Mac, Mr. Steve, on a percentage scale, about how much evidence would Ellie need to get that warrant?
Anything over 50, probable. Once probable, it's probable. 51% is more than not probable. And so anything, but each judge sometimes that you'll have a warrant and you'll have it written out and you'll have all the information that you think meets the criteria to be probable cause. And then the judge will look at you and says, or ask you a question about clarification or what else do you have? And then you just either you can give oral testimony or if the judge wants you to put that down into the warrant, you just put it into the affidavit and the warrant. But I've been there and have my hand raised and about to be sworn in, and the judge swears you in and then says and reads it out to you and says, what does this mean? What else do you have? And you just have to supply that information, but it has to be probable cause. It can't be a shot in the dark. And as you saw in the Ron Logan affidavit for that search warrant, there was a lot of information in it. How much was embellished? Don't know. It appeared to be some. And hopefully that won't be the case with this one. Hopefully they stay to the facts. They have the probable cause, and it's listed in there, and it's going to remove a lot of doubt of where this case is headed.
All right. And Duty Ron was in chat and wanted Molly to let you know to give his thanks to you and support his brother in blue.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Duty
That's
Ron.
awesome. Thank you so much. All right. And Avondale Mama, really hard for me not try to mentally correct RA's grammar. English was my favorite subject in college. I had a hard time with that too today. That was difficult.
Well, I butcher the King's language daily. I do, and just have to bear with me. I'm just a Southern boy, and but she her education level is far in excess of mine.
And DGR Dave, RA is entitled to a speedy trial. A speedy trial would be a nightmare for the prosecution.
And I think if a speedy trial was declared, it would still be 2 or 3 years because there's so much to this case. But doesn't mean it. The final say of the day, of course, will be that court, and they will say that you brought the charges, and so let's go. But I don't see that happening. Because the defense has certain things that they have to do and to guarantee the most favorable outcome for their client.
And the Rockaways, seriously, we got the Dream Team Brain Trust in the chat tonight.
Let me tell you, you got Duty Run, we got CD. I watched both of them. They both have great content. And of course, Duty Run is on a level that he's up there, has quite the reputation.
All right. And Patricia, has RA's wife abandoned him and that's why he begged for help from the judge?
I don't know. Really don't know. He hasn't abandoned her because he mentioned her in his letter. Was that to gain sympathy, or is that just to make the court aware that his wife has now had to leave the property? And so courts will look at that and address it the best way that they can.
And Diggs, over 70% of inmates in America's prison cannot read above a 4th grade level.
Once again, I hadn't read that, but like I said, this letter here is RA or Richard Allen is a scholar among inmates.
And Never Silent, what happens if one girl's family wants the death, but the other one asks for life in prison instead? What would the courts be likely to do?
They'll go along with what the families and the prosecution and whatever deal is made, because they'll be negotiated. The judge won't get the first draft of it. It's going to be the families will negotiate it with the prosecutor. The prosecutor will come up with some type of deal with the defense. They'll present it to the judge. Then the judge can either accept or deny. Or at least that's out here in Georgia. Don't know up in Indiana. I've heard some good things about this judge, though.
And Pigeon Mac, there definitely seems to be a correlation between ignorance and education and behavior and criminality.
It can be, absolutely. Like I said, it's the brain trust in a jail is very, very limited. the pool is very shallow.
And DGR Dave, it's been hard for the defendant to receive counsel, being moved so many times and not having access to PC.
You know, I don't know what the current up in Indiana it is about in the law library and what access do they have to the internet, and what protections they have with that. But that will be interesting to find out. That's something to think about.
And Avondale Mama, the more a child is read to in the home, the better a reader he will be as an adult. I love that.
Oh, yes.
And Junior Johnson, would he have to sell all his property, house, cars, and other things before he would be eligible for state-appointed attorney?
I saw certain numbers listed at what level it would have to be financially, but they'll do a financial on him. And I would assume, and I don't know how they would handle it, but it would go before the courts and he'll have to answer certain things and possibly pay for a certain amount of his defense until he reaches the level that he becomes indigent. Don't know. That makes sense, but don't mean just because it makes sense, don't mean it's what will happen. Lynette Joy, maybe. Found phone in Wabash. Kagan promised connection to Allen's ID while waiting for forensic to prove it. Went back to early investigation and bingo. That makes as much sense as right now. That is as good a theory as any of them. Right now, we just don't know. Shannon Foster, have safe travels on your upcoming trip. Still can't get me ever ship going. Silly me.
She had a wreck.
Oh my goodness.
Bless her heart.
Yes.
Hope you feel better.
Yes.
And thank you so much.
Take the meds. Whatever the meds are, take them. Don't suffer.
All right. And Mrs. Thing, who would give RA the idea of writing this letter?
Like I said, it could be anybody, family friend, a family attorney, another jailhouse inmate that is a jail lawyer, or his common sense, or he's went out and researched and had access to the law library. And after speaking to his wife, and they're having a discussion or speaking with anyone, and he said, well, I'm going to, I've checked with attorneys, and because we know that he's found out how expensive it is. So we know he's talked to an attorney, and through those attorneys, they would have told him that, well, if you can't afford these fees, you're going to have to throw yourself at the mercy of the court. And is that where he got the idea? Don't know. More than likely, somewhere within that description is exactly what happened. Just don't know which one.
And DGR Dave, in my opinion, the prosecution need to get their heads out of their behinds and release that PC. It's going to be a problem for the whole case if they don't do things by the book.
And I don't know if they've not done them by the book up to this point or not. I know things can be sealed, and I don't know what hearings they've had and what hearings they will have, but we know on the 22nd they're going to have something that's going to occur that's going to answer that question.
And Paper Chaser, such helpful info. RA continues to surprise us. Odd that he isn't proclaiming his innocence.
And, and that's a natural assumption that he's innocent. And so, we got probable cause. I'm going to go with Carter, that a judge, I think as he says, is a judge saw fit or something along those lines to issue a warrant on probable cause. And so we're going to go with those route.
And Molly, with RA being in suicide watch, closely guarded, etc., would he be allowed phone calls or any contact with people outside of the prison?
Whatever the protocols and are set up for inmate communications and things, access to phones, access to law library, he's going to have access to a lot of things, because there's a lot of people that's in jail right now, somewhere in the United States, that have been falsely accused of something. And until they go to court, they're innocent. And so they're held on and they're looked at a little bit differently than the ones that are truly that once you're adjudicated and you're sentenced and guilty, then you fall into a different ballpark.
And Daisy, will he need an attorney before being able to plead guilty or not guilty?
That may have already occurred. I think I read somewhere where one of the judges or something had mentioned something about that entered a plea of not guilty and was going to seek his own defense. I may have misread that or not remembering that correctly, but I thought that that had already been proclaimed.
And Junior Johnson, I doubt anyone would buy that house if they were to try and sell it to get funds for the attorney.
I don't know.
I wouldn't want to list it. Keith, that this keeping everything closed, making people think there's more killers on the loose is unforgivable, and they all need to be held accountable.
Yeah, we just don't know what they're protecting. Are they protecting the investigation of more people out there? Are they protecting a person that might have tipped it in that's included in that affidavit? We'll find out, though.
And Rose, has he been able to see what evidence they have against him?
Well, if he's guilty, he knows what evidence that they have against him because he'll realize what mistakes, or he'll realize a lot of his mistakes he made. If he's innocent, there will be a hearing and discovery of all the evidence, but that's all part of the trial. Right now, all that he would have is what the probable cause is. But at some point, he will, as we go through different points of the court hearings, he'll be made aware of certain things, and eventually it will be some type of discovery of what evidence they have.
And Patricia, I heard they got him after arresting him for another crime and took mandatory DNA swab, and it came back as a match to Delphi.
Don't know. I've seen that. I just don't know if that's true, but I've seen that.
And Diane P., he will need about 4 times the selling price for that house for decent attorneys.
Well, if he gets indigent, then that's will be picked up by the public defenders.
Moon Dancer, is he allowed to communicate with his wife?
He'll be allowed to make phone calls and communicate with whatever the court protocol or the jail. They're going to have a schedule of when visitation occurs, when phone calls can be made, and letters, mail call. There's a lot of communications that happen, as we've seen with the clients, with the chirping devices and all this that inmates get. Will he have the same access if it's within that jail and that's part of their procedures? Yes.
And True Crime with Shannon, your thoughts on unsealing the affidavit and probable cause?
Open it. You felt confident in going before a judge and accusing a man of a crime, and that's public record. And so if it's public record, it's public record. Open it.
And Keith, unfortunately, this monster has rights. They need to follow the letter of the law, then fry this animal. We do have the death penalty.
Absolutely. If he's found guilty, I'm with you.
And Vid Inquiries, funny how he's, quote, worried about her safety, end quote, but obviously wasn't too concerned about the girls.
Yep. Absolutely. If like I said, if he's the one that did what he has been alleged to have done, he absolutely is a self-serving narcissist, just like a lot of people describe him to be.
And Crimezilla, will the judge on November 22nd take into consideration the signatures received to keep the documents in this case closed to the public?
The judge only consider what is law, and that's it. They'll look at it. they'll consider what arguments are made for the defense, what arguments are made by the prosecution to keep it sealed, and they'll, whatever the law says and whatever the judge interprets, and after hearing those arguments, that decision will be made.
And Patricia, the thing about communicating by letter is one can hide all bad personality traits much easier. That's true.
I would like, I always, there's some advantages to the letters because once it's there, it's there. But there is certain things about looking a person in the eye and seeing the demeanor and how they carry themselves, how they answer, what those certain indicators as a person is questioned, how they act can be extremely valuable.
And Patricia, it's more amazing that he went to work in the next building alone from the sheriff's office, and the cops were all probably tipping their hats to him.
Yeah, I mean, hiding in plain sight. They said it.
And I'm not even going to try this. So I'm going to say Bedrock. Can you be appointed to a public defender and the public defender declined to take the client?
There would be certain rules about that you would have to just like recuse yourself if you were part of something.
A conflict of interest.
Yeah, but there would be a process of recusal.
Avondale Mama, I couldn't defend someone that I thought was guilty of this type of crime.
Defense attorneys are interesting. They extremely are, but they believe in the Constitution so great that that's what they do. And you have to admire a man that would do that.
And Zuter, or a woman. In Zuter, Judge Gull has presided over some heavy hitting cases and has handed down the death penalty.
That's interesting.
Perfect.
That's interesting.
All right. And that was all of my marked comments. So if you want me to keep going, okay, I'm going to have to scroll.
Well, guys,
are you done?
Well, we can be. Just scroll for a minute. I'm going to do a little brief thing about thanking everybody. I want to thank everyone that came in here tonight. And like I said, I'll be gone leaving Sunday night, but Saturday night we'll have a show, just coffee and clues, talking about the case here and anything that develops by tomorrow, because there's things that constantly come out that surprises us almost every day about something on this case. But I want to thank all my subscribers, all my members, all my contributors, and everyone that has helped me on so many different levels that allow us to do what we've done. As our channel grows, and I can't believe, just 12 days ago, we were at 3,000. Now we're approaching 4,000. And it's absolutely, we're 3/4 of the way there to that. It's absolutely amazing as this channel grows. And I just want to thank everybody out there. It's humbling because we never knew that this is what would be happening with us. And it opened up new doors for us to go out there and work these cold cases. And when I was talking to that family member tonight, and we're about to head out to them, they most certainly appreciated that. And I want to thank y'all for allowing us to be able to do that, to have this impact, because without y'all, we couldn't. And, but anyway, we got anything else that you saw that stuck out for you? But anyway, I'll see y'all Saturday night. We'll be back at 8. And y'all have a safe weekend. Enjoy it.
Oh, Cyclops, 2 more states are up.
Okay.
Yay. And got 1 more sitting out there. So hopefully I'll get that up sometime this week for you.
And on the note of Cyclops,
thank you.
Check out Cyclops. It has a lot of missing and murdered children in there, and check it out and use it to the best of your abilities to get the information out there and help these families as much as you can. But anyway, thank y'all, and we'll see you soon.
Love y'all.